Tempers flared on the Brazilian football pitches, bringing a truly shameful and unexpected scene that deeply shocked everyone who has ever followed the brilliant careers of our biggest football idols. During the standard pre-match handshakes, a rival player completely ignored Neymar, leaving the superstar with his hand hanging in the air in a deeply humiliating moment. This ugly incident instantly reignited an old, bitter feud, and all the way from the other side of the globe, Lionel Messi simply could not stay silent after witnessing the blatant disrespect shown to his closest friend. You really need to understand the shocking things that were happening behind the scenes in this escalating drama. Hit that subscribe button right now and share your thoughts in the comments about this utterly ridiculous lack of respect on the pitch. This sheer display of chaos and blatant disrespect on Brazilian soil sent shockwaves straight through the entire international sporting community. But the absolute truth is that this bitter feud between Neymar and Thiago Mendes has incredibly deep, historical roots that need to be detailed step by step, so that everyone can truly grasp the sheer gravity of what just went down at the São Januário stadium. To truly comprehend the massive scale of this ridiculous situation, we have to go back in time and revisit every single chapter of this hostile drama, a feud that genuinely seems to have no end in sight. The whole conflict started back in 2020, during a highly intense and explosive match in the French League, when Neymar was proudly leading the attack for Paris Saint-Germain and Thiago Mendes was anchoring the midfield for Lyon. The match was already deep into stoppage time when the defensive midfielder launched himself into a brutal challenge, a violent scissor tackle from behind that directly impacted the left ankle of the Brazilian star, with the horrific images of that exact moment sending immediate shockwaves across the football world. We all remember Neymar being carried off the pitch on a stretcher, with tears streaming down his face. He was completely consumed by agonizing physical pain and the crushing anxiety of knowing he would be sidelined from the game he loved for a very long time. And when the severity of the injury was officially confirmed by medical tests, the fury of both Paris Saint-Germain supporters and football fans globally erupted instantly, which ultimately forced the French Football Federation to hit the midfielder with a swift three-match suspension. Years passed after that night, but memories in the world of professional football are notoriously long and often fueled by deep, lingering resentments. When fate finally brought them face-to-face once again, this time on Brazilian soil, with Neymar proudly wearing the legendary Santos jersey and Thiago Mendes commanding the midfield for Vasco da Gama, the air was thick with tension. Many fans genuinely hoped that water had flowed under the bridge and that professional maturity would ultimately prevail. But the actual reality of the situation proved to be completely the opposite. Even during their very first clash of the season, played in the heated atmosphere of Vila Belmiro, all the built-up tension quickly boiled over onto the pitch, sparking highly intense and aggressive arguments. With insults clearly caught on camera and a massive chaotic brawl on the field where Neymar furiously shouted at his opponent, calling him an absolute idiot after the rival aggressively demanded respect, all because the legendary number 10 had gestured for the Vasco da Gama fans to be quiet right after scoring a truly brilliant goal. This intense rivalry, which was already incredibly toxic, quickly escalated into a full-scale personal war, culminating directly in that shocking recent incident at the São Januário stadium, where a complete lack of basic manners and sportsmanlike respect sank to an absolutely unacceptable historic low. The deliberate action by Thiago Mendes, turning his face away and leaving Neymar's hand hanging awkwardly in the air right in front of millions of watching fans, was far from just a petty, isolated tantrum of childish jealousy, but rather the toxic reflection of a long-standing, deep-seated resentment that severely tarnishes the reputation of our domestic league and drags a beautiful football match down to a petty playground brawl. While this dramatic storm was boiling over on every sports broadcast and taking over social media feeds, sparking endless fiery debates about basic professional ethics and mutual respect, Lionel Messi's entire world was quietly shattering in a state of absolute, crushing grief back home in Argentina. The Houston's profound connection between Neymar and the Argentine icon goes far beyond the boundaries of the pitch, stretching way past the silverware they lifted side by side, wearing the famous shirts of Barcelona and Paris Saint-Germain. They forged a genuine, unbreakable brotherhood, built on deep mutual admiration and the shared silent understanding of what it feels like to carry the astronomical pressure of being the defining star of a whole generation. And it was right in the middle of this intense, chaotic storm in Brazil that the news of the hostile treatment surrounding his close friend traveled across international borders to reach Messi, who at that very same moment was quietly fighting the most painful and difficult battle of his entire personal life. Jorge Messi, who was not just a father but also a mentor, representative, and the absolute central pillar of the Argentine captain's life, had sadly passed away at 68 years old in a medical clinic in the city of Rosario, following a long, incredibly draining battle with severe health complications that had rapidly worsened ever since the high-pressure period of the 2026 World Cup. Mourning the loss of a father is an unimaginably heavy burden to bear, and the Inter Miami superstar found himself forced to navigate the most profound, agonizing grief imaginable, quickly returning to the United States after attending the moving tributes and the solemn, emotional funeral back in Argentina, carrying a heavy mix of guilt and deep longing in his heart for not being able to secure that final World Cup trophy to dedicate to the one man who had guided his every step. Even while dealing with this incredibly devastating backdrop of immense sadness and final goodbyes, his deep-rooted friendship with Neymar remained completely unshaken, proving to everyone that true bonds can easily withstand any distance or hardship, this toxic storm and senseless cruelty blowing in from distant pitches. The heavy impact of this truly devastating and irreparable loss in Lionel Messi's life echoed deeply across all of his social media platforms, where the global superstar completely opened his heart and shared the raw, shattering pain of saying that final goodbye to his beloved father, with millions of fans watching all around the world. In a deeply emotional and heartbreaking post that shook the entire sporting world to its absolute core, the legendary Argentine icon finally revealed the painful behind-the-scenes reality of the last days of Jorge Messi's life, sharing how the family patriarch fought so bravely against his illness right during the 2026 World Cup tournament. In words that were heavily weighed down by deep tears and pure nostalgia, the famous number 10 of Inter Miami recalled the constant, desperate pleas from his father, who kept pushing him to play in what would inevitably be his very last World Cup journey, even though they both knew his failing health would make it impossible to stand in those massive stadiums for the first time in an incredibly glorious career. Messi admitted the gut-wrenching anxiety of searching for his father's reassuring post-match text messages immediately after the final whistle blew, and the crushing silence that followed when he realized his phone would never ring again, with those warm words of encouragement that had guided him ever since his very first kicks as a boy back in Rosario. The Argentine star poured his soul out about the desperate, burning hunger he had to reach the grand final of that historic tournament, purely so he could dedicate the ultimate trophy to the father who first taught him how to love the game of football, grieving the fact that his own tired legs and extreme physical exhaustion simply could not hold out until the very last second of that historic run. And it was right in the middle of this painful storm of emotional vulnerability and profound sorrow, a time of mourning where his deep bond with Neymar took on a far more powerful and comforting meaning for both players. Even while completely overwhelmed by grief after his father's passing, and having to rush straight back to the United States to jump right back into his demanding routine with his club in Florida, the Argentine captain made absolutely certain that he was there to support his close Brazilian brother during his own tough times, proving once again that the deep bond they forged during those golden years at Barcelona and Paris Saint-Germain remains completely unbreakable. So when Neymar had to deal with that petty, uncalled for disrespect and childish attitude from Thiago Mendes on the pitch at San Januario, the immediate wave of solidarity and unconditional support that passed between these two legendary football icons only proved that at its absolute purest core, this beautiful sport is really about true brotherhood and standing together against life's heaviest struggles. Neymar's classy and dignified presence on the field, keeping his head held high despite cheap provocations, found a powerful echo in the sheer resilience of Messi, who was dealing with the most shattering heartbreak of his entire life, yet still made sure to watch over his close friend. This incredibly unique connection between the Brazilian star and the Argentine genius immediately makes any petty league championship controversy seem completely irrelevant by comparison, serving as a powerful reminder to the football fans everywhere that the true legacy of these legendary icons goes far beyond silly rivalries and becomes immortal through the deep loyalty and genuine respect they share both on the pitch and in their personal lives. While some players choose to diminish their own names and legacies by leaving a teammate stranded out of petty spite and bitter grudges, true footballing giants like Neymar and Lionel Messi teach us a massive lesson in class and strength. They withstand shattering grief, immense personal suffering, and the toxic hostility of bitter rivals on the pitch without ever losing an ounce of their dignity or letting go of the bond of an unbreakable brotherhood. The monumental legacy built by these two giants rises far above any petty drama and will remain forever etched in the history of global sport. What do you think about this shocking display of disrespect on the pitch? And what are your thoughts on the emotional bond between these two icons? Share your views with us down in the comments below and stay tuned for more football stories. Until next time.